From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Wild Wild West, released in 1999, starring Will Smith, Kevin Kline, and Kenneth Branagh. Directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. The synopsis is: two U.S. Marshals, James West and Artemus Gordon, are assigned by legendary U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant to stop a madman, Dr. Arliss Loveless, from dismantling the United States. The story. This is the feature film based on the Wild Wild West TV series that became popular between 1965 and 1969. The TV series was set in the Old West and features two Secret Service agents, James West, played by Robert Conrad, and Artemus Gordon. The show was notorious for being campy, having gorgeous disposable women each week, having inventions that didn't exist until the late 1800s, and was influential in inspiring steampunk, a term that was coined in the 1980s. The show was eventually canceled for being too violent. A television movie, Wild Wild West, Revisited, was made in 1973, but a feature film was pretty much on the back burner, but became interesting around the time of the late 90s. Richard Donner, who had directed 3 episodes of the original Wild Wild West TV series back in 1965, was set to direct either Wild Wild West or Maverick, starring Mel Gibson. He chose Maverick, which was released in 1994. Well, finally, a movie was set to be in production, with Will Smith to play James West and Barry Sonnenfeld to direct, right off of their success with Men in Black, released in 1998. This nearly guaranteed the success of a great box office draw for the film. The story is credited to Jim and John Thomas. The screenplay is credited to 2 writers, and then it was rewritten again by 2 others. When the film was pretty much done, test audiences didn't laugh at the film because it was more of a serious thriller. And then the studio decided that the film needed to be rewritten by a 7th writer to insert more action, comedy, and a giant robot spider. And we'll get to that giant spider later on in the review. The premise of this movie has really good bones. It has a good structure to provide a good story. But the comedy, that's the biggest problem here. I so want to see that version of the film where there was less comedy and it was more of a thriller. The film also wanted to address the obvious fact that the lead actor was African American and how he would deal with race issues in the 1800s. Unfortunately, I just don't think there's anything funny about that. And a lot of people agree. It's just, it works as a thriller, it works as a serious drama, but not so much as a comedy. And then, within the writing, there's a couple of references to the original show sprinkled in, including the opening credits and the original Wild Wild West theme near the climax of the film. Now, the pacing. At an hour and 46 minutes, the pacing is pretty awful, to be honest, because there's so many things that don't matter to the story that are just ideas and incomplete characters that, that are kind of cool, but they actually have no context in this story. The challenge. At the start of the film, we are led to believe that the main villain is General McGrath. He is portrayed as the most physically vile person you could imagine. He's greasy, unkempt looking, and he's donning a very nasty ear injury. He has a phonograph, which was at one point used for old record players, attached to the unhealed wound that is just like red and pussing and just, oh, it's very gross to look at. And you know, it's pretty ridiculous. So one look at him and you know exactly what you're getting into for the rest of the film. General McGrath was a former Confederate general responsible for an attack on a place called New Liberty, a settlement of freed slaves in Illinois, where he earned the nickname Bloodbath McGrath. He is seemingly trying to procure guns and ammunition for his legion of men, and the reasons why is not really explained, but we can guess that maybe he wants revenge on the Union for winning the war. In exchange for the arms for his militia, he is kidnapping all of the world's scientists for his boss, Dr. Loveless. And now to the main villain of the story, Dr. Loveless. In the TV show, he's a narcissist called Megalino Loveless, and he is also a person of a smaller stature. Loveless's first name was changed to Arliss, and he is now an amputee who lost his legs in the Civil War. Arliss is really the true evil in the film, using the world's scientists to build him technology that will eventually destroy the U.S. Army. He has also gathered all the diplomats from Spain, Mexico, and France to finance his desires. And in exchange, they will regain their former U.S. territories. Loveless is surrounded by gorgeous women with dangerous talents and has a small arsenal of mutant assassins to do his bidding. Later on in the story, we learn that he also has a city, that he built that is called Spider's Canyon. He is seeking retribution. As much as the audience understands his motivation, it's hard to understand how what he's doing and the way he's doing things will be successful. So to be honest, the threat is really not there for me. I don't really feel like our characters should be afraid of Dr. Arliss, to be honest. He's not threatening at all, but he is interesting. The empathy. Okay, so Jim West is our protagonist, and he is absolutely unlikable until about the end, where he just barely has an arc. He's cocky and he's just mean-spirited sometimes. A great example of this is a scene in which he gets on the train to meet his future partner, Artemus, and as soon as he gets on the train, he wants to fight him right away just because he doesn't like being paired up with him for the mission. It's kind of frustrating to see scenes like that because it makes no sense. How can we like this person who is so irrational? We understand Jim a little bit more during the film because he explains that he's a runaway slave and he was separated from his family. His biological family was a part of those that were slain in the Battle of New Liberty. So he has good motives to be a little angry as a character. And every once in a while we get a bit of charm and some jokes from him. Artemus is actually a really likable character, but the artificial tension that is between him and Jim is so irritating at the very beginning of the film. But as the story continues, you really see him shine as an agent and an inventor. During the film, he does mention that he resents his role as the sidekick and as his label as the gadget guy, which is probably when I feel that the tension is really earned and it actually feels right. the love interest in the film is Rita, who is inserted into the film to give our duo even more unnecessary tension between each other. She's playing them both so she can find her husband Escobar, and she strings them along by telling them that Escobar is her father. Now, Rita does have a little bit of intel for the boys. Other than that, it just seems like her character doesn't impact the story as well as it should have or could have, and it's kind of a letdown there. Now to the technical aspects. Guys, I really enjoyed the ridiculous spectacle of this film. It's really a beautiful mashup of ideas. A story aside, just the aesthetics of the film. Wow, loved it. Even the gross parts, I was so into it. And, you know, they didn't hold back for anything. Not even the lack of technology to fulfill the visuals. And I love that. I love when a film, you know, really overextends its reach. And this one did. On the most part, it looked pretty good for 1998. We've got to give it a little slack. And it almost holds up visually, except for a few parts where you can see that things were kind of wonky. But, you know, again, a lot of the things that are practical in the film, they look so good. The decor, the costumes, all of that stuff really shines in this film. And the detail to creating that steampunk look, you know, it's just iconic in a way. A year prior to this film being released, Jon Peters hired Kevin Smith to write the screenplay for the abandoned movie Superman Lives. One of the requests by Jon Peters was to include a giant spider. You know, the film Superman Lives was never made. However, the giant spider made its way into this film, which was also produced by Peters. As much criticism as the film gets, I personally feel that the costumes and set design are just particularly excellent. I mentioned that before, but I have to just say, look, there was a lot of work and effort really put into every scene here. They put most of the budget into creating great costumes and set designs. Now the score. The score was pretty good, and it benefited from a very catchy hit song from Will Smith, Wild Wild West, with Kool Moe Dee, Dru Hill sampling the song I Wish by Stevie Wonder. It was incredible that summer, and you know, that music video that went to the song was pretty good as well. It did well to promote the film. Performances. Will Smith plays Captain James West, turning down the role as Neo in The Matrix, released in 1999. Now, and the reason why he chose Wild Wild West was because he was a fan of the original TV series. Come on, that's a good reason why. It's just, who would have thought that there would be, you know, that The Matrix was going to be so much more successful, and that the Wild Wild West was going to end up being a box office flop. Later, he said that this was the worst decision he made in his career. Initially, he praised the film and performed the title song and promoted it heavily until it was obvious that the film wasn't doing well. And that's what you do as a performer and as an actor. You promote the film that you're in, even if it isn't the best, because that is your job. Well, he said when he asked his mother for feedback, she said that he had done better in the past. And you know how some moms could be brutally truthful. Kevin Kline played Artemus Gordon and President Grant, and I really enjoyed his performance. If there was a place in the film where there were more actual comedy scenes to be gotten, was from Kevin's performance, because he's really doing a great job, and he is providing a little subtle humor that we love from him as an actor. Kenneth Branagh plays Dr. Arliss Loveless, researching the American Civil War to bone up on his character. Kenneth commented that he was mainly interested in this part so he could learn from watching Barry Sonnenfeld and how to handle big budget studio films. And it seems he was really paying attention, because he went off to do Thor in 2011 and Cinderella in 2015. As expected, Kenneth gives 100%, can we dare say 110% in his performance. You know, in the contraption that he had to create the illusion of being an amputee, he's basically kneeling inside of a metal device. And he said that there were many times when he would just lose the circulation in his legs. They would just constantly go numb. So he really sacrificed for his part. Look, his performance is, you know, most notably over the top, but I thought it was utterly enjoyable to me. I love my villains really over the top, and I feel like he delivered this. Watching him in this film really puts a really big smile on my face. And you know, I don't know, I just have never seen him in that kind of character before, and so it was kind of nice to see him play something that was different from his archetype. Rising star Salma Hayek played Rita Escobar, giving her character all of her effort. She later said that she was not given enough to do in the film, and I couldn't have agreed more. Now, the best part of the film for me was the spectacle of that giant spider. I love that ridiculous thing. I'm totally surprised that they kept it in the movie too. It's like, yeah, should we keep it in the movie? Yeah, we'll keep it in. Good times, good times. We're off to our wish list. Now, I wish that the jokes had been more reined in, and maybe had it where Kevin was the one who was really doing more of the jokes, and Will been the one that was more serious, but every once in a while give us a ha-ha, woo! You know, give us one of his Willisms. And I also would have loved to see the two characters vibe back and forth with comedy that was lighthearted and fun. And I think that's the difference between this being a dark movie that everyone wants to sweep under the carpet, and something that could have been more like a Pirates of the Caribbean kind of Disney-esque, hey, we need to make a sequel of this one, kids will love it, so on and so forth. It just crossed the line so many times, so it was so hard to really enjoy the film with those glaring moments. So anyway, now I also wish that Artemus had been given a deeper backstory, so we could truly understand that he was not just the gadget guy. We got deep into James West, finding out what kind of character he was, but it really... And why he's the way he is, but it would really have been cool to find out who Artemus was and why he was driven to be the gadget guy. It's so funny because it's the irony of the movie itself to be so self-aware to mention that he was just the gadget guy, but not do anything about it, like actually tell us who he truly was underneath all of the gadgets that he creates. Like, for instance, why is he into gadgets and why is he risking his life? Why is he a U.S. Marshal? Things like that. Now, I also wish that this goes back to Loveless and him being a good villain, but not a great villain. We didn't have the tension. And, you know, I understood Loveless's motives for being vengeful, being that he was injured in battle. But I don't understand the benefit of splitting up the states. Why not just rule the world with his giant spider? Like, what is, he could do that instead. Just, hey guys, I'm taking over. And then he can design, the world the way he sees fit to run it. I also thought that a man with so much ingenious access to technology would probably have the lower half of his body rebuilt, or at least have been working on technology to enhance his own physical body. Imagine his character like being revealed at like the mid part of the story, or maybe by the end, that he, at all this time, he was a victim of war and that he was robotic. I think that would have been so cool. That's just me getting all like, we're trying to rewrite the script here. But I also, another piece to this is that I mentioned that the pacing was an issue and the sense of threat wasn't there, because we only get to see the most deadliest henchmen. Okay, these guys are bad. Like, I don't want to even be in the same room as these guys. But we get to see them at the end of the film, and they die so quickly, they serve absolutely no impact on the story. And I feel like if they had come earlier in the film, and there would be a sense of victory over defeating them at the end. That's part of the pacing problem that I have with this movie. Again, also, I feel as if General McGrath was killed too early in the film. I mean, we build him up and we give him all this character, and then we kill him so soon in the film. I just didn't feel as if he should have been taken out of the story so early. All right, now my enjoyment. For years and years, I had no idea that this film was so critically panned, because every once in a while, it would show up on TV and I'd catch it then. And I was also very shocked that the film was marketed to kids with a line of toys. When the first scene is a scene of a guy being beheaded by one of Loveless's machines. But I think that's the problem of this film. It was trying to be like kiddie. It was trying to reach kids. It was trying to reach uncles and aunts and be very commercial. But then it didn't have the chutzpah to actually be a horror, thriller, mature film with blood and guts and gore and stuff, and be heavy and be like actually have stakes. So yeah, it had an identity problem. So you know what? For me, one of the highlights of the film is definitely Loveless, this over-the-top personality and how he was shot on camera. I mean, he's like spinning and the camera's spinning with him, and someone was just having fun filming that day. I mean, it's kind of hilarious. And I love the gadgets. The gadgets were so was There were some parts of it that was really funny to me, and fun ideas put together. And the film, really plays out like a fever dream, the spinning and swooping, zooming camera movements, beautiful women for decoration pretty much, completely improbable happenings, and that dazzling giant steampunk mechanical spider. So in my opinion, this is actually kind of a dare I say it, a guilty pleasure in a weird way. Don't hold it against me, guys. I know it's a weird one, but I do like this film and its weirdness. And it's more for the visuals and the tragedy of just watching everything kind of implode on screen. Is just like, wow, they could just watching it. It's just pretty interesting. Especially to know the background of everything that's going on behind the camera. My rating is a 6.7. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.